So now let's talk about ECS. ECS stands for Elastic Container Service, and this is used to launch the Docker containers we just talked about on AWS. For it to work, we need the Docker containers to run somewhere, and so for ECS, you must provision and maintain the infrastructure yourself, so that means you need to create EC2 instances in advance. AWS will take care of starting or stopping the containers for you, and it has integration with an application load balancer if you wanted to create a web application on ECS. So as a diagram, we would have multiple EC2 instances, and we would need to create these EC2 instances in advance, and they will be running different containers by the ECS service. Now the ECS service, anytime it has a new Docker container, it will be smart enough to find on which EC2 instance to place that Docker container. So anytime in the exam you see, I want to run Docker containers on AWS, think of ECS. Now let's talk about Fargate. So Fargate is also used to launch Docker containers on AWS. But this time with Fargate, we don't need to provision any infrastructure. So we don't need to create any EC2 instances and manage them. And this is a much more simple offering from AWS. This is actually a serverless offering because we don't manage any servers. AWS will just run the containers that we need based on the specification of CPU and RAM for each container. So Fargate is going to be a lot simpler to use, and I like it personally a lot. So Fargate is here. Say we need to have a new Docker container to be run on Fargate. Then Fargate will automatically run that container for us. We don't exactly know where, but it will be run. And so the idea here is that with Fargate, we don't manage any EC2 instances, and so it is easier to use. So before with ECS, we first created our EC2 instances, but with Fargate, we don't. But both services allow you to run Docker container on AWS. Finally, for storing these Docker images so that they can be run on AWS, you need to use a container registry. And for this, we can use ECR, which stands for Elastic Container Registry. It is a private Docker registry on AWS, and this is where you're going to store your Docker images so that it can be run by the ECS service or the Fargate service. So to take an example, we have ECR and Fargate. We're going to store our images of our application onto Amazon ECR, and then Fargate will be able to look at these images and create a container from them and run them directly on the Fargate service. So it could be one container here, one container there, but this is ECR, so we could have multiple images as well, creating different containers on Fargate. So that's it. Very, very simple. So remember, ECS versus Fargate versus ECR, that's all you need to know going into the exam. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.